In Seoul, secrets have weight. They settle into the spaces between words, into the silence that follows a careful smile, into the measured distance between what is shown and what is real. Tonight, the secret I've carried for 4 months feels heavier than the rain that streaks down the floor-to-ceiling windows of this penthouse overlooking the Han River. My name is Amara, and the man sleeping in the room behind me controls more of this city than most people will ever know. He believes in protecting what he loves. What he doesn't know is that what he loves most is growing inside me, and I've been too afraid to tell him. The medical report in my hands confirms what I've suspected for weeks. 16 weeks. 4 months of careful planning, of loose clothing and strategic timing, of morning sickness disguised as work stress. 4 months of loving him while terrifying myself with the implications of that love. Lee Min-ho operates in a world where information is currency and vulnerability is dangerous. His influence extends through corporate boardrooms and government offices, through networks of loyalty built on respect and fear in equal measure. To the public, he's a successful businessman who owns half the luxury hotels in Seoul. To those who understand how power really works in this city, he's the architect of decisions that shape everything from real estate development to political campaigns. I met him 2 years ago at an art gallery opening in Gangnam, where I was working as a cultural consultant for international collectors. He approached me not with the aggressive confidence I expected from a man of his reputation, but with genuine curiosity about a piece I'd been studying. His Korean was flawless, but he spoke to me in English, somehow sensing my background before I'd even introduced myself. What makes this moment so unsettling is how normal everything appears. Min-ho is sleeping peacefully in our bedroom, exhausted from whatever meeting kept him at the office until 3 in the morning. The penthouse is quiet except for the soft hum of the air purification system and the distant sounds of Seoul's nighttime traffic 40 floors below. Everything looks exactly as it has for the past 18 months since I moved in with him. But everything has changed, and he doesn't know it yet. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but it wasn't entirely unexpected either. We'd talked about the future in abstract terms, about the possibility of a family someday when his business obligations were more settled, when the complex network of relationships he manages could accommodate the vulnerability that children represent. But someday felt safely distant, a conversation for a different version of ourselves. Here's why this decision mattered so much. In Min-ho's world, family means responsibility, and responsibility means exposure. His younger sister lives in London specifically because proximity to him creates risk. His parents maintain carefully orchestrated public lives that never intersect with his business relationships. Even our relationship exists in a carefully managed space where my professional independence provides cover for the depth of our personal connection. A child would change that calculation entirely. I've spent the last 4 months researching what it would mean to raise a child in Seoul, in his world, with his responsibilities. I've watched how other families in similar positions manage the balance between protection and normalcy. I've consulted with security experts and international schools and pediatricians who specialize in high-profile clients. The research has been both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring because I've learned that it's possible to create safe, normal childhood experiences even within complex circumstances. Terrifying because I've also learned how much planning and precaution that requires. What I haven't been able to research is how Min-ho will respond to becoming a father before he feels ready for that responsibility. The sound of footsteps on marble interrupts my thoughts. Min-ho appears in the living room wearing the simple black t-shirt and pajama pants that somehow make him look younger than his 34 years. His hair is tousled from sleep, but his eyes are alert in the way that never fully shuts off, even in the sanctuary of our home. "Can't sleep?" he asks, settling onto the sofa beside me with the careful grace that characterizes everything he does. I fold the medical report and slip it between the pages of the art history book I've been pretending to read. "Just thinking about the exhibition next month. The Seoul Museum wants to feature more African contemporary art, and I'm trying to identify artists who would resonate with Korean collectors. It's not entirely a lie. I have been working on that project, using it as cover for the additional research I've been conducting." Minho nods, accepting the explanation because he trusts me, because in 2 years I've never given him reason not to. "You've been working late more often recently," he observes, not accusingly but with the attention to detail that makes him so effective at reading people and situations. This is where perception begins to change. I realize that my efforts to hide the pregnancy have created patterns he's noticed, absences and alterations in routine that his trained instincts have catalogued even if he hasn't yet identified their meaning. "The international market is expanding," I say carefully. "More opportunities, but also more complexity in managing relationships between different cultural expectations." Minho studies my face with the intensity that initially attracted me and now makes me nervous. He can read micro-expressions, detect inconsistencies in tone and body language that most people would miss. It's a skill that serves him well in business negotiations and makes him nearly impossible to lie to. "Amara," he says quietly, and there's something in his voice that suggests he's seen through my careful deflections. "What aren't you telling me?" The question hangs between us like a challenge. I could deflect again, continue the careful dance of misdirection that has sustained this secret for 4 months. Or I could trust him with the truth and accept whatever consequences follow. The real tension wasn't fear of his reaction to the pregnancy itself. Minho would be an extraordinary father. I've seen how he interacts with his business associates' children, how he remembers their names and interests, how he creates spaces for lightness and joy even within serious conversations. The real tension was fear of what this news would force him to choose between. His business relationships require a certain kind of calculated distance, a willingness to make decisions based on strategy rather than emotion. Becoming a father would introduce a new variable into every calculation, a consideration that could limit his options or compromise his judgment. I've been terrified that he might see our child as a liability rather than a gift. "There's something I need to tell you," I say finally, my voice steadier than I feel. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." Minho's expression doesn't change, but I sense the subtle shift in his attention, the way he's suddenly cataloging every detail of my posture and tone. "How long have you been trying to find the right words?" he asks gently. The question surprises me with its insight and compassion. 4 months. He nods as if this confirms something he's already suspected. "Since the night you came home from that medical conference in Busan looking like you'd seen a ghost." I remember that night. I'd attended a presentation on prenatal care in high-stress environments, initially as research for a completely different project. By the end of the evening, I'd been asking questions that revealed my personal interest in the topic. The drive back to Seoul had been 3 hours of processing the reality of my situation. "You've known?" I ask. "I've known something was different," Minho says. "You've been protecting me from information you think I'm not ready to handle. That level of care usually means the information is significant. Here's why this conversation matters more than any business negotiation he's ever conducted. This is the moment where our relationship either evolves to accommodate new realities or fragments under the pressure of competing priorities. This is where he chooses between the careful control that has defined his professional life and the vulnerability that real partnership requires. I reach for the medical report, my hands trembling slightly as I unfold the paper between us. The ultrasound image is clear, unmistakable, beautiful in its stark black and white simplicity. "We're having a baby," I say simply. Minho takes the report, studying the image with the same focused attention he applies to architectural blueprints or financial projections. For a long moment, he doesn't speak, and I find myself holding my breath while he processes this new information. 16 weeks, he says finally, reading the technical details with careful precision. "Yes. You've been carrying this alone for 4 months. There's no accusation in his voice, but I hear the hurt underneath the measured tone. "I was scared," I admit. "Scared of what it might mean for your work, for your relationships, for the carefully balanced life you've built. Scared that you might see this as something that complicates your responsibilities rather than something that completes our family." Minho sets the report aside and takes my hands in his thumbs tracing gentle circles across my knuckles. "Do you know what I was thinking about in that meeting tonight? The one that kept me at the office until 3 in the morning? I shake my head. "I was thinking about legacy," he says. "About what happens to everything I've built when I'm no longer here to manage it. About whether all this influence and control serves any purpose beyond itself." His hands move to rest gently on my stomach, and I feel tears gather in my eyes at the tenderness of the gesture. "You've given me the answer to that question," he continues. "Everything I do, every relationship I manage, every decision I make from this moment forward will be about creating a world that's safe and stable for our child. Not just financially secure, but ethically sustainable. Not just powerful, but worthy of the family we're creating." This is where everything shifts, where the careful boundaries between his professional and personal life begin to merge in new ways. "You're not afraid?" I ask. "I'm terrified," Minho admits with a laugh that sounds almost giddy. "But not of becoming a father. I'm terrified of how much I want this, how much I want to be worthy of this responsibility." He stands and pulls me to my feet, holding me close enough that I can feel his heart racing against my chest. "We're going to need to make some changes," he says practically. "Security considerations, living arrangements, staffing adjustments. But Amara, we're also going to need to talk about what kind of life we want to build for this child." The conversation that follows extends through the early hours of dawn. We talk about schools and cultural identity, about balancing Korean heritage with my African roots, about creating space for a child to develop their own sense of identity within the complex reality of their father's position in Seoul society. We talk about practical considerations too. The penthouse will need child-proofing and additional security measures. His business schedule will need to accommodate family time and medical appointments. We'll need to identify pediatricians and schools and social circles that can provide normal childhood experiences while understanding the unique circumstances of our family. Most importantly, we talk about values. About raising a child who understands privilege as responsibility, who sees diversity as strength, who can navigate between cultures with confidence and compassion. "There's something else," I say as morning light begins filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I want our child to know both sides of their heritage. That means spending time in South Africa, learning about my family's history, understanding where half of their identity comes from." Minho nods thoughtfully. We'll need to establish relationships there, create safe spaces for travel, build connections that can provide cultural education and family bonds. It's complex, but it's important. The sun rises over Seoul, painting the city in soft gold light that transforms the urban landscape into something almost ethereal. From this height, the city looks peaceful, orderly, manageable. But I know better now. I know that real life happens in the spaces between the careful facades, in the relationships that bridge different worlds, in the courage required to trust someone else with your most precious vulnerabilities. What makes this resolution so powerful isn't the dramatic revelation or emotional crisis I'd imagined. It's the quiet confidence that comes from discovering that the person you love sees your shared future the same way you do. It's the recognition that some secrets are too important to keep, even when sharing them requires tremendous courage. Minho's phone buzzes with the first messages of the business day, but he doesn't reach for it. Instead, he keeps his hands on my stomach, talking softly to our unborn child about the soul they'll inherit, about the family that's waiting to welcome them, about the love that will surround them from the moment they arrive. "We should call my sister in London," he says eventually. "She's going to want to be involved in choosing the nursery design. And probably in choosing the nanny, and the pediatrician, and everything else." "She doesn't even know about me yet," I point out. "She knows about you," Minho corrects. "She's been asking when I'm going to bring you to London for a proper introduction." This gives us the perfect excuse. The idea of meeting his family both excites and terrifies me. But I'm learning that the things worth having usually require embracing some degree of fear. "When do we tell people?" I ask. "When do you want to tell people?" I consider the question seriously. After we've had time to process this ourselves. After we've made the necessary arrangements. But before it becomes obvious to everyone else. 2 months then, Minho decides. That gives us time to prepare, but doesn't wait so long that people feel excluded from something important. The timeline feels right. It acknowledges the magnitude of the changes we'll need to make while creating space for the joy and anticipation that should accompany this news. As Seoul fully awakens around us, I realize that the secret I've been carrying wasn't really about hiding my pregnancy from Minho. It was about hiding from myself the possibility that love could be strong enough to accommodate any challenge, that partnership could evolve to meet new circumstances, that the future could be different and better than anything I'd planned. The most dangerous man in Seoul is about to become a father. And somehow, that feels like the safest thing in the world. 6 months later, I'm standing in the nursery we've created in what was once Minho's home office, watching him assemble a crib with the same focused precision he applies to business negotiations. The room is painted in soft neutrals with touches of both Korean and South African art, a visual representation of the cultural bridge our child will inherit. The security consultant wants to discuss protocols for medical appointments, Minho says without looking up from the instruction manual. And the nanny candidates are coming for final interviews next week, I add, settling into the comfortable chair we've positioned near the window. The conversations about logistics and security have become routine, but they no longer feel overwhelming. We've learned to balance necessary precautions with normal family planning, creating structures that protect without constraining. "My sister called this morning," Minho continues. "She's booked a flight for next month. Something about wanting to be here for the baby shower and to evaluate our parenting readiness." I laugh, imagining the intensity that Minho's sister will bring to her role as aunt. Are we ready for that evaluation? Minho sets down his tools and comes to kneel beside my chair, his hands finding their familiar place on my now obvious bump. "We're ready for whatever comes next," he says with quiet confidence. Looking around the nursery, I realize how much has changed since that night when I finally shared my secret. The changes aren't just in our living space or daily routines, but in how we think about the future, how we balance personal desires with professional obligations, how we create space for love to grow within complex circumstances. The baby kicks, and Minho's face lights up with wonder that never gets old. "Strong," he says proudly. "Going to be a fighter like their mother." "Smart," I counter. "Going to be strategic like their father." "Both," Minho decides. Strong and smart and completely unprepared for how much we're going to spoil them. As evening settles over Seoul and the city lights begin to twinkle beyond our windows, I think about the story I'll someday tell our child about the night I stopped being afraid to share our secret. About how courage sometimes looks like trust, how love sometimes requires vulnerability, how the strongest foundations are built not on control but on the willingness to grow together. The most dangerous man in Seoul is humming lullabies while assembling baby furniture. And somehow, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.